Welcome to Face Forward, the podcast, the series that takes you behind the scenes of the riveting world of clinical trial management. I am your host, Valerie Coveney, and I am thrilled to be your guide on this journey through the nuances of planning, executing, and navigating the clinical research landscape. Joining us today is an industry specialist with a 27-year background in clinical data management and statistics. His experience spans various domains, including programming, EDC, quality assurance, and statistics. In this episode, we will explore system integration within clinical trials, focusing on three main points: the significance of system integration, the benefits and drawbacks, and finally, the details surrounding specifications and testing. Let's extend a warm welcome to Innovaderm Senior Director in Biometrics, Éric Hardy.
Thank you, Valerie. Very pleased to be here.
Amazing. Okay, so let's get into this, the importance of system integration. What would be its significance in clinical research?
Well, nowadays, with the proliferation of the numerous systems that are used by the sites to gather all kind of information that are important for the clinical trials, we're asking a lot from the sites. So they have a lot to remember in terms of the different requirements and the processes for all of the different systems. By integrating all of the systems, we can reduce site burden by asking them maybe to create subject into only one system, let's say the e-consent one, and then integration would be made automatically into the other systems to make sure that the subjects have been created based on specific triggers, meaning that when the site connect to those other systems, then all of the subject data would be already partially available. By default, if the site does not have to create subject basic information, that could be subject ID, gender, age, date of birth, we are preventing creation of errors resulting from duplicated data entry.
Okay, what would you say are the most common additional systems integrated with EDC?
There's mostly the RTSM, the Randomization and Trial Supply Management. There's eCOA, which includes ePro and eClinRO, which is electronic patient reported outcomes, as well as electronic clinical reported outcomes. Mm-hmm. And we can also add eConsent, which is used more and more now.
Okay. So let's shift here to the pros and cons of system integration. What are the advantages of integrating RTSM and ePro with EDC?
So as I said previously, it reduces the data entry error at the level of the subject creation. And for the sites, as data is entered in one system and can be cascaded down to other systems, it means less duplicated information to be entered. Mm-hmm. And obviously, duplicating information could lead to differences due to data entry. Examples of really important variables that could be integrated is a stratification variable. So you could want to stratify your trial by age or gender or by some primary endpoint baseline value. Once entered in RTSM, for example, the information would be pushed into EDC, in which it will be maybe in a read-only format to make sure that the data cannot be changed in the receiving system. So that way you are ensuring data coherence and integrity. Another example of data that can be integrated would be the visit dates. Mm-hmm. So if you have a study in which there's drug distribution at every visit, then the RTSM becomes the first system into which data will be entered by the site. And by integrating this visit date information into the EDC, the site does not have to create, again, that visit, doesn't have to create additional entry. So you're, again, preventing discrepancies or other kind of errors.
Mm-hmm. And what about the cons?
I've encountered different issues in the past in which we could have prevented some issues by integrating the systems. For example, I've seen studies in which the subject were assigned a different subject ID. This is a simple data entry error, but that is very difficult, or that could be very difficult to fix. You need to work with data management. We need to work with the vendors that are involved. And this can create uncertainties that is related to the data. And this is definitely not something that we are looking for into clinical trials. Mm-hmm. Another disadvantage is the duplication of information again. So entering same information multiple times in different system, it could lead to differences simply due to data entry error. This is creating lack of efficacy since it creates work for the data managers who will need to reconcile the data, issue queries, and then for the sites to answer queries, correct the data, etc. Another good example of problems that could occur is when a stratification variable is first collected into, let's say, an ePro system. If the data is integrated, so you remove the risk of misstratification that could occur if the site instead have to connect into the ePro system, identify the right patient, read the required values, then go back to the RTSM, select the right patient, and enter the data manually. So there's a lot of steps, as you can see, where an error could occur. And if it occurs into a stratified variable, it could have an important impact on the statistical analysis of the trial.
Definitely.
And finally, we were talking previously about visit date. So if you have integration of the RTSM, let's say, with the ePro system, having the visit date would reduce the manual work that is required by the site. We still see some ePro systems on the market that requires the site to trigger themselves when questionnaires are ready for the patient to use based on when the study visit occurred at the site. So instead of relying on the sites to do this, it could be triggered automatically when the systems are integrated, which is a lot better.
Definitely. Okay, so now we're on to our last point for today, specifications and testing. How are specifications and testing crucial to system integration?
Well, while it is true that integration has great advantages, it needs to be thoroughly detailed for vendors to program. So you need to create very clear documentation, very clear specifications, which variables will be at the source and to which destination variables they need to be mapped. This will ensure that there is no ambiguity for the vendors first to program. And then, from the specifications, you will need to be able to create test cases or to use them during your user acceptance testing. So this will help making sure that all adequate tests are performed, and it will confirm that the expected flow of the data and the integrity of data is present in all systems.
And what should be considered or kept in mind when developing integration specs?
So the specs will really depend on the systems and the vendors that you're working with. So for example, if you choose to work with the same provider for multiple systems, then you can expect that this integration would be readily available because the different systems will often be built over maybe one database. So integration is already kind of present. But if you're working with different providers, then you might need to rely on different technologies, maybe such as API, which is a software intermediary that will allow different systems to communicate together. Another thing to consider is the simultaneous development of those systems. In order to be able to create the complete specifications, you need those original systems to be ready near final, I would say. So the integration per se will come later in the process, much closer, let's say, to going into production. So you need to work very closely with every team involved so it's managed properly, and then you prevent any kind of delay that way.
Okay, and before we finish off here, what would be some common misconceptions on system integration?
I feel that sometimes the sponsors will think that integrating systems, it's not worth it. It's just additional amount of money. But I don't really agree with this. Yes, there are additional fees that are involved, but clinical trials are so important and, they end up being so costly that investing into integration simply means that you are investing in the quality of the study data. Costs could also be reduced by working with the reduced number of system vendors, as we discussed previously. So, for example, if you're integrating EDC, RTSM, and ePro within one vendor, it will be much simpler than working with 3 different vendors.
Definitely. So this was the last point for us today. Thank you so much, Éric, for being part of this conversation.
Thank you, Valérie. It was my pleasure.
As we conclude another illuminating episode of Face Forward, we find ourselves at the crossroads of science and progress. Remember that behind the jargon and statistics lie stories of unwavering commitment, meticulous observation, and the pursuit of evidence that shapes our understanding of health and disease. Stay at the forefront of knowledge and innovation and follow Face Forward on your preferred platform. My name is Valerie Kovney. Thank you for joining us. Until next time.